Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie from the subreddit HFY, called Space Soap Opera, written by Legal. The link will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Zenrothi Star Citadel orbiting the central world ring. I really don't know why you're so worried, senior field actress Delilah Monroe said as they walked through the halls of the Zenrothi Star Citadel. Because if it doesn't work well, we'll be killed. First-class technician Bernard Brandonson replied in what was something between a hiss and a whisper. You can talk openly, darling. They aren't listening to us yet. They don't care. The Zenrothi technocracy has ruled the stars for millennia. They are, if nothing else, completely confident in their superiority over all of the other nations. We're nothing more than toddlers to them. Besides, they don't believe in torture, so if this doesn't work, at least our deaths will be quick. How is that better? The technician blurted out. Because Sophia, that old witch, has to sell the other side of our little story to the Holy Kunluthu Empire, and she doesn't make it convincing, she's gonna die very slowly. Maybe she'll actually give a convincing performance for once in her life. Delilah sniffed a little, her nose up in the air, before they came to a stop, before the final set of doors that would lead them to the meeting chamber. She looked down over her outfit for a moment, tugging the military uniform and picking off a tiny piece of lint with a disapproving click of her tongue. And then she pulled out of her usual mirror and touch-up kit, examining herself before nodding in satisfaction and putting it away. Try to say as little as possible. I understand your acting skills are quite poor, but you were the only technician that we could find who had any experience. Any experience? The longest that I was ever on stage was in high school play. In the first act as the beggar with one line, and in the second as a tree. I was a stagehand for the rest of the times. Bernard quickly explained, but Delilah didn't look at least bit worried. Then again, even if she was, she wouldn't let it show. Well, then you're at least seen people act. Now, just keep in mind that they never compliment each other, so they're very susceptible to flattery. Plus, if one of them takes a fancy to you, just take one for the team and think of it as an audition. She stepped forward and then pressed her hand on the door to make it open as Barnard blinked, in confusion. What? Take one for the team? He asked as his mind raced for more worried thoughts. Action, darling, Delilah reminded him as she walked forward with a smile. The technician had to clutch his gear to his chest and rush forward after her. The room was large and mostly taken up with giant statues and pictures to commemorate the finest Zenrothi moments in the long and storied history. Neither of the humans came up past the bases of any of the massive works of stone and metal, but Delilah didn't even glance at them. She just walked straight ahead to the gathering Zenrothi arrayed around the throne at the far side of the chamber. Once the Zenrothi had held the court in such chambers, showing off their power and dominance for all of their foes and subjects. But now the humans were all that ever visited. Kranis, darling, you look as radiant as well put together as always. I think that you must be using a new polish. Your head is shinier than ever. I dare say that you make your new paint job look simply marvelous. The 3-meter-tall mass of muscle and metal that must be the Technolord Kranis, the Destroyer, shifted a little in his throne at the heap of compliments. Thank you, your hips seem, proficient with for childbirth. The purple-fleshed Xeno seemed to make a sound that was like clearing his throat. But it wasn't even clear if he still had a throat in that cybernetic chassis of his. Oh, Cronus, you old smooth talker, how the female units must line up for a chance to be impregnated with your superior DNA. Delilah replied with a laugh, as if the Technolord was as smooth as silk as his attempt at banter. The line isn't that long as it used to be, he replied, causing Delilah to laugh at his retort, but Bernard wasn't even sure that the Xeno was joking. Now, I would love to be prattling away like we used to, but I'd bring dire news, and well, I know that you love to socialize. I suspected you'll want this information. She smiled as she looked over Bernard, who blinked and looked back at her frozen in place. When she glared at him, then motioned towards the Xeno, Bernard finally remembered what he was here for. Oh, Hello, Grand terrifying Kranis the. His mind went totally blank for a moment. Kranis? He looked at Delilah, who frowned, obviously not realizing what was happening. Kranis the menace. Bernard finally finished. The Xeno stood up at that, servos whirring and gears cranking to move his giant body. Kranis the menace, rather than my self-chosen title, you dare call me this? The Xeno bellowed, arms raised as his shoulder cannon seemed to activate. Yes? Bernard tried, and the Xeno seemed to think it over. Kranis the menace. I like this name. Very well, little human. What dire news do you bring to me? Bernard blinked up at the massive hawk before him and began to open up his gear bag. We intercepted a transmission from religious people? He looked up at Delilah as once again his ability to remember names had fled him. Those moronic idiots of the Cthulhu darling, Delilah cut in, realizing the issue finally. You must forgive my assistant. He's obviously smitten with the desire at the sight of your amazingly beautiful and efficient daughter. Bernard blinked, and he looked at the rest of the Zimrathi around the throne. One of the, slightly more feminine, maybe, Xenos, turn away for a moment, letting out a rather robotic tee-hee. Oh, frick me. Bernard whispered out, but to his horror, Kranis seemed to hear that. Mirth and enjoyment. This one is very forward, is he not? You have the most amusing emotional companions. As he said that, the others in Rothi all began to echo out the word of mirth over and over, as that was their form of laughing. Just saying mirth, over and over. Bernard was slightly put off, but his focus was brought back to Kranis. There might be a time for that later, brazen flesh puppet. But first, this transmission. Oh, yes, Bernard began to pull his system out of his bag when he heard Kranis speak again. Mirth, 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 you think to show us anything on a pitiful display built by your fleshy appendages. Bring it up onto the main screen. He shouted that last part, raising his arms up, and then the giant screen began to drop out of the ceiling. It had to be the largest screen Bernard had ever seen. No one spoke, as it took a full 4 minutes to finally complete its drop before it settled into place with a mechanical whine. The Zenrathi stood there watching the black screen as Delilah snapped her fingers to get Bernard's attention, and then nodded to the corner of the display. Oh. He realized what the cables that he'd been given were for, and walked across the room to find the ports on the side. Fumbling with the adapters for a moment, he began to plug his computer into the giant screen before hitting the play button on the file that they'd found. When the very small image appeared at the very center of the screen, Bernard gulped, realizing that the video had no way to fill up the absolutely massive screen the Zenrathi had built. But before he could complain, Kranis roared out, "Why is it so tiny? Computer, make the flesh puppet video expand to the whole screen." When it jumped in size, and it was so stretched out that it was blurry, it didn't appear to be anything coherent. Again, Bernard was going to explain when Kranis roared once more, "Computer, enhance the image!" Well, I mean, there isn't enough resolution, so enhancing it won't. Enhancing, a vaguely feminine voice replied from nowhere. Then Bernard's extreme surprise, the video became perfectly clear. How? What? But I didn't think that was possible, he blurted out. Not to inferior flesh puppets, of course, but to the mighty Zenrathi technocracy. No technology is beyond our reach. Kranis bellowed out before sitting back down in his throne. Now start over, I missed the first part. Bernard quickly started the video over again. It seemed to show the grand High Overlord Archbishop Chancellor Zizit the divine impeccable sentinel of the faith, sitting in his own throne speaking. This is where Bernard gulped and figured that they would be dead. They could use CGI because the Zenrathi would spot it from a mile away. So they had to use a more practical setup, and he was just positive that the Xenos would tell that it was an animatronic reptile, not the real thing. Zealot of the faith, it is time. I've been given a sign from the divine himself. We are to take the stars once more. The Zenrathi and their decrepit star rings and fortresses have thought themselves the young upstart rulers of this galaxy. Let them not forget that we, the Conluthu, have existed long before and shall exist long after their demise. They haven't taken a new system in 1,000 years. Their ships stirred to rust and fall apart as they fail to go to war against the pathetic insects that now plague the nearby systems. The human. Today is the day I declare a crusade against the Zenrathi and their allies. For why else would they not smite the pitiful wretches? Or perhaps they lack the power as the fleets crumble around them. The Conluthu shall be victorious in this. Nothing shall stop our divine fervor. Bernard then grimaced as there was some reaction shots of the, hordes of Cthulhu's idiots cheering to the news. He set a hand over his face, watching between his spread-out fingers as he thought he spotted the same footage recycled a few times. They were dead. They were dead. Kranis would blow his head into mush with his plasma cannon. When he heard the Xeno behind him roar out, Bernard gulped and closed his eyes. This was it. He was dead. How dare they? Bernard slowly unclenched. The Cthulhu speak of us this way. Those inefficient, delusional, arrogant, obtuse, poorly designed, organic, religiously inefficient reproductive organs. Bernard wasn't sure of the choice of words from the Xeno, but he could clearly see that the Xeno had brought their video. I know, darling, it's simply dreadful, isn't it? Delilah said. This is why we had to show you. Now, of course, we would simply never think of ourselves as worthy of being your allies. We, weak, simple flesh puppets, have only just started to obtain the technology to enhance our fragile organics with superior cybernetics. But the Cthulhu don't know any better. They mean to destroy us both. I fear this could mean only one thing. She gasped out and then turned to the side, her head tilted back. That back of her right hand pressed against her forehead and her left arm stretched back in what Bernard figured was supposed to be a dramatic pose. No one was saying anything when he looked around at the Zenrathi before he realized what Delilah was waiting for. What, pray tell, does it mean? He couldn't control his strange inflection in his words as he grimaced, but she continued as if he hadn't messed up. War! She shouted, not bringing her hands up to her face before striking an expression he thought might be horror. Maybe indigestion? No, it was horror. Outrageous to think that the Cthulhu would dare to insult us and our fleet. They are the ones who let their empire fall to ruins around them. If we had not needed our grand fleets to fend off the species 99-3143-4324-6631 invasion 5,000 years ago, then we would have ground them to dust. Well, we shall wait no longer. Delilah, of course your weak flesh puppet bodies will not be of use to us in this war, but we shall give you some limited designs so that your people may join us in this war. And you... He pointed to Bernard. What is your name, human? Bernard Randerson, sir. Mr. Techlord Kranis the Manus, he stammered out. When the time comes, Double Bernard, my female unit offspring shall replicate with you atop a pile of the bodies of our enemies. But that time is not now. You will have to contain your genetic material until then. Now, leave us. With that, Delilah made the strange gesture with her hand in the air, like mixing the air, bowing low. Of course, my darling friend, I shall wait for new commands from you with bated breath. Or she made an exaggerated flourish with her arms before she made for the door. Bernard gulped and quickly began to pack up his gear, zipping the bags shut quietly. I'm just gonna go, he finally stammered before chasing after the other human. Once he had caught up to her in the hall, he waited for the door to close behind them before speaking. How did that work? They're unbelievably advanced. We have no idea how their engines work or how they harness such immense power for even their warships. And on a personal note, I think the most ridiculous technology of them all is to somehow make more pixels appear like magic. How could they not see that this was a crappy animatronic suit with some extras that looked like rubber masks? The Xenrothi ruled over this sector of the galaxy for thousands of years. They have harnessing the power of suns while we were trying to figure out how the hell to eat artichokes. But they never had theatre, no films, no TV, nothing. So, not only are they so completely confident that they've figured out all there is to know about the universe and technology, but there isn't any room in their mind to even conceive of the chance that pitiful little flesh puppets like us could deceive them. Delilah smiled at that and laughed. What god would think an insect could lie to it? Well, what about the Conluthu? Bernard asked when they reached their ship. They don't have TV either. Since they're extremely religious, they've got a better understanding of theatre, but that hardly matters, because why will they doubt our words when the Discoverer, Xenrothi's ship starting to mass, in order to purge the galaxy of a religion once and for all? We may not share the light of their divine God, but we humble servants will of course forever pledge ourselves to them if they come to our defense. We're new to the galaxy stage, but manipulating these fools is child's play. She laughed once more. Is that why we have no friends and are barred from the Core World Alliance? Bernard asked them. I assure you, that was all part of the plan, she said with a smile. Now let's report our success to our superiors and, well, we'll have to get you some cybernetic hips so Kranis's daughter doesn't crash them when the time comes. Wait, what? Core World Alliance Council on Nimiki 7. We need to discuss the humans. The current Federation Prime Minister Agnot Engelberg said from his place at the circular table. They've stopped almost all trade and they aren't pestering us to join the Alliance anymore. Does anyone know why? The insectoid Titanix Queen fluttered her wings. Our scouts bring us worrisome news. They say that there is a war between the Xenrothi and the Cthulhu, and somehow the humans are involved. Of course they are. Who else would be stupid enough to settle not next to one, but two of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful and most hostile empires? I'm sure they're being torn apart by the Xenrothi and Cthulhu for some trivial purpose. I'd have expected them to beg for our help, though. The rocky-faced overforeman of the Nishifrom snorted from his seat. The humans are not being attacked. The Queen informed them then. We don't know why, but the Xenrothi and Cthulhu tear at each other, but the humans do not seem affected. We are most perplexed. How could that be? The first principal Ninery asked from inside of the water tank. You must be mistaken. I'm sure that they've done something to annoy the empires. They're always meddling with things that they don't understand. When we first met them and traded them for two of our warp cores, rather than simply take them apart and learn from them, as expected, they fused them together in an attempt to go twice as fast, and instead blew up a star. They instead continue to use gate travel. It's highly unstable. They'd rather take a shortcut through hell than develop a slower, safer travel method. They're mad. All of them. Still, Engelberg spoke up again, all this has ever done is to try and join the Alliance. They do have a democratic system despite their, oddly militant culture. Why would they suddenly cut off ties with us if they aren't under attack? Maybe it is a ploy, the Queen asked. From the humans, the Nishirium snorted. They're so blatant about everything. They have all the subtlety of an avalanche. What if the slender high enchantress of the Tinaxolotl spoke up from behind a mask then? What if they found a way to harness the powers of those two great empires? What if they are building up a force to attack us as revenge for being left out of the Alliance? They wouldn't dare, the Nishirium roared, slamming his fist onto the table. We'd crush their pitiful navy. They're decades behind us in tech. Yet they seem to jump decades and years in months, the Queen cautioned. Which is why we didn't want them in our alliance in the first place, the principal shouted. They are reckless and maniacal with their so-called research. They'll one day surely create a weapon that'll obliterate the galaxy and claim that they were just trying to study how the universe works. They created small black holes to study already. It's dangerous and forbidden, not to mention that they'd lop off bits of themselves to replace with cybernetics, willingly. And they have a very storied past with religion, the Prime Minister mused. Do you think that maybe they somehow allied themselves with both the Zenrathi and the Konluthu? You've seen how blunt and tactless their diplomats are with us. They lack the skill and grace necessary for such an impossible feat. The High Enchantress dismissed. Well, we need to take a vote, Engelberg mentioned. I must once more put forth my plan to bring them into the alliance. They're crazy and reckless, but I'd rather have them on our side. The others began to mutter quietly with their aides when the first principal, Nain Ray, had a small text pop up on a data slate. It had no information about who it was from, but he glanced over at the Nishirium. Are you sleeping with my wife? He blurted out as a Rocky Zeno looked stunned for a moment and then coughed. Why? Would you ask such a thing? Who told you? He tried to divert the question. That's not important. Are you sleeping with my wife? Was that your dirt that I found in her tank? I am the overforeman of the Nishirium. I shouldn't be subjected to such wild accusations. And with that, the council fell into a bickering and arguing before the vote could even be held. Government Spire, Earth. Sir, Director Generals Rosewater and Sanchez are both finishing up their principal shoots, so we'll have more footage to send to the Zenrathi and Konluthu. Admiral Bay is reporting total success in the Pyrotechnic Corps in their mock space battles as well. Though he's rather over budget, he really did blow up some of the ships that we gave him. Said that it couldn't be faked. Will you please allow me to send our Tactical Accountants Division to bring him under control? Cynthia had been with the president long before he had taken office, so while she may have just had the title of secretary, she was truly one of the more important figures in the government. Nonsense! President Teddy snorted at the idea. Some things truly can't be faked. If the footage is anything like he's done before, then it's just what we need. The Zenrathi love explosions. The Admiral knows his audience. Some things just require throwing enough money at them, and faking being at a war is one of them. Very good, sir. Reports from the Core World Alliance Council say that the scent is forming thanks to our leaked footage of the Nurseurium and the First Principal's wife. Excellent. Tell the Prime Minister that the High Enchantress is really her evil twin sister. That'll help stir things up even more. He grinned at the idea. Stroking his moustache while next to him, his personal barber began to lather up some shaving cream. He never missed his daily shave. Is the High Enchantress really his twin sister? Cynthia asked. She hadn't heard that. I have no idea, but I know that the Prime Minister is very paranoid about that sort of thing. Oh, and get the Chet Granite to freck up the Trentix Queen already. I want them to stop feeding their scouts information to the others, damn it. He slammed his fist onto his desk to make his point before leaning back as his barber began to lather up his face for his shave. His moustache took a whole lot of work to keep perfect. I spoke to the Chet, and he's not very interested in the idea, Cynthia informed him. Boulder crap. Tell that man that he has a duty to his country, a duty to all of humanity. We need him to freck a bug. So, freck he must. I tried your usual style on him, sir. He said that he won't do it for less than 50 million, and a green light on a pet project of his that films in the new Italia in the next 6 months. The president snorted, but kept still for his barber. Shall I counter with 30 million in filming for 4 months? She asked, with which the president gave her a thumbs up. And what shall we do about the Wervillian Empress? They're expecting more input from us about the invasion of the Core World Alliance. The president waited for his barber to pull back his razor before he could talk. Released the footage of his son with Olivia Hotpants. That's not how her name is pronounced, sir, Cynthia replied, though she made a note of the plan. I don't care how it is pronounced. The public will have a field day with it, and his arranged marriage to the Princess Caledormbia will be in trouble. While the Empress deals with the fallout, it'll give us more time to splinter the Core World Alliance. And once she invades, we'll sweep in and be the heroes forming a new alliance with us in charge. Speaking of, have the ambassador tell them he's got triple cancer. Or something. Just get him out of there, but make it look like it's a health thing, and we'll send a new ambassador soon, which we won't. Oh, and call up the governor of the Orion Traverse and tell him to pretend that there's been a sector-wide outbreak of, bionuclear anthrax. That'll scare the Tixtran scouts from entering the territory and blind them to our fake war. Trintix, she corrected. Whatever, he grumbled. How's the actual war going anyway? The Zerathi and the Conluthu really do hate each other. Both sides are taking heavy losses and gaining no ground. We haven't even needed to try and intervene. Our salvage teams are putting in more than even our highest projections. We'll be following up with the actual invasion for the territories. Course not. Let them wear themselves out. We don't have the power to take them on yet. Even in this weakened state. Maybe in 50 years. But by then they'll have become so dependent on us that we will enter as liberators and saviors, not conquerors. Rumor mongering and gossip, that's how we take over. That and a military to back up all of that, of course. He finally settled back down and he let his barber work as Cynthia nodded and headed out of the room to let him enjoy his shave. From there, she was going to have to schedule some reshoots in the desert invasion and oversee the new design of their rubber Cthulhu suits for the extras. Then she was going to have to get several superstars to get over their egos and work together in the latest series of propaganda footage. After that, they would come to an inevitable clamor of their scientists in which the project needed the most funding with the new salvage from the war, and they simply didn't have it in the budget to follow every possible lead at the same time. All this before lunch. It wasn't easy running a fake war and planning for a real one at the same time. But from a species that had been pretending to fend off alien invasions from before their first actual encounter with another space-faring species, it was like they'd been practicing for hundreds of years for this mission. Movies and military, war and theater, the two pillars of human society, interwoven into an unstoppable force. In a way, she thought that it was a little unfair for the other species, but really, she was looking forward to a human-dominated galaxy more, because no one else had movies even half as good as them. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support the channel or the author, all the stuff is down below. And as always, I hope that you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next story. Cheers.